In 1941, when a Russian woman named Mariya Oktyabrskaya received a letter informing her that her husband had been killed by Nazi forces, she didn't collapse in grief. She didn't seek comfort in the arms of her family. Instead, she sold every single possession she owned, including her home and her clothes, raised 50,000 rubles, and sent a personal telegram to Joseph Stalin. She didn't ask for a pension or a medal. She asked for a T-34 medium tank, and she asked for the right to drive it into battle to hunt down the men who took her husband's life.
To understand how a woman from a humble background became one of the most feared tank drivers on the Eastern Front, we have to look back at where it all began. Mariya was born in 1905 into a massive peasant family on the Crimean Peninsula. She was one of 10 children, and life in the early days of the Soviet Union was anything but easy. Poverty was a constant companion, and hard labor was the only language the world seemed to speak. But Mariya was resourceful and resilient. After finishing school, she worked in a cannery and then as a telephone operator. But her life truly changed in 1925 when she married a Soviet army officer named Ilya Oktyabrskaya.
This marriage wasn't just a domestic arrangement. It was the foundation of her military destiny. Mariya took an immense interest in Ilya's profession. In the Soviet Union of the 1930s, there was a movement known as the Military Wives Association. These women weren't just expected to keep a home, they were encouraged to become army wives in a literal sense. Mariya leaned into this with everything she had. She learned how to drive vehicles, how to use a rifle, and basic mechanical skills. She once famously said that marrying a soldier means you serve in the army too. She wasn't content with being a civilian on the sidelines. She wanted to understand the machinery of war.
When Nazi Germany launched Operation Barbarossa in June 1941, the world was turned upside down. Ilya was immediately sent to the front lines to hold back the German advance. Mariya, like thousands of other women, was evacuated far to the east, eventually settling in Tomsk, Siberia. For 2 long years, she waited for news. In the chaos of the retreat and the brutal fighting of the early war, communication was sporadic. It wasn't until 1943 that she finally received the news that would shatter her world. Her husband, Ilya, had been killed in action near Kyiv in August 1941. He had been dead for 2 years before the letter even reached her.
Most people would have been paralyzed by the delay of that grief, but for Mariya, the sorrow immediately distilled into a cold, hard rage. She was 38 years old, and in the eyes of the Soviet military, she was past the age of useful service for a combat role. But Mariya didn't care about their rules. She saw a path forward that utilized the Soviet Union's desperate need for hardware.
She sold everything: her furniture, her linens, her jewelry, and the very roof over her head. She worked tirelessly to supplement what she had, eventually amassing 50,000 rubles. In today's terms, that was a small fortune, enough to cover the manufacturing costs of a T-34 tank. She then composed a letter that would become legendary. She wrote to the Kremlin, addressing Stalin directly. She told him that her husband had died defending the motherland, and that she wanted to avenge his death and the deaths of all Soviet people tortured by the fascist barbarians. She stipulated 2 conditions. The tank must be named Fighting Girlfriend, and she must be the one behind the wheel.
Stalin, recognizing a massive propaganda opportunity, and perhaps impressed by her sheer audacity, approved the request. But the Red Army brass remained skeptical. They figured she would donate the money, take a few photos with the tank for the newspapers, and then be sent to a rearguard unit or a medical corps. They underestimated her. Mariya was sent to the Omsk Tank School for 5 months of intensive training. This was not a ceremonial course. She was learning the guts of the T-34, a machine known for being physically demanding and mechanically temperamental. She proved to be an exceptional driver and mechanic, often outperforming men half her age. When she finally arrived at the front in September 1943 as part of the 26th Guards Tank Brigade, her fellow soldiers mocked her. They called the Fighting Girlfriend a joke. They joked that a grandmother had come to the front to play soldier. Mariya ignored them. She knew that on the battlefield, the only thing that mattered was steel and fire.
Her first real test came during the Battle of Smolensk. On October 21, 1943, Mariya steered Fighting Girlfriend into the heart of a German defensive line. She maneuvered the tank with surgical precision, crushing machine gun nests and destroying an 88mm anti-tank gun. During the height of the battle, a German shell struck the tank's tracks, blowing them apart and leaving the vehicle a sitting duck in the middle of a kill zone.
Standard procedure was to wait for recovery or bail out under cover. Mariya did neither. In defiance of direct orders to stay inside the armor, she leaped out of the tank while bullets whizzed past her and mortar shells exploding nearby. She crawled into the mud and, amidst the chaos of the battlefield, manually repaired the tracks. She managed to get the tank moving again and rejoined the fight. Her crew, who had initially been skeptical, were now in awe. She wasn't just a driver, she was the most fearless person in the brigade.
Her reputation grew. She was promoted to the rank of sergeant. To her crew, she became a mother figure, but to the Germans, she was a specter of vengeance. She spent the next several months in constant combat. She wasn't just participating, she was leading the charge. She developed a reputation for mechanical aggression, using the tank itself as a weapon to ram enemy positions.
The final chapter of Mariya's journey took place in January 1944, during the Vitebsk-Orsha offensive. On January 17th, she led her tank into a heavily fortified German position. She successfully knocked out several German trenches and another anti-tank gun. However, lightning struck twice. A German shell hit the tracks of Fighting Girlfriend, once again rendering it immobile.
Ignoring the pleas of her crew and the intensity of the German fire, Mariya climbed out of the hatch once more. She was determined to fix her girlfriend and get back into the hunt. As she was working on the tread, a German mortar shell exploded nearby. A piece of shrapnel struck her in the head. She was rushed to a military hospital in Smolensk. For 2 months, she drifted in and out of a coma. Her crew visited her, telling her that Fighting Girlfriend had been repaired and had reached the city of Königsberg, continuing the fight in her name. On March 15, 1944, Mariya Oktyabrskaya succumbed to her injuries. She was 39 years old. In August of that year, she was posthumously awarded the title of Hero of the Soviet Union, the highest distinction the country could bestow. Her story became a symbol of the Great Patriotic War, a testament to the fact that vengeance, when fueled by love and loss, can turn an ordinary person into an unstoppable force of history. Mariya didn't just buy a tank, she bought a place in the stars. She proved that the heart of a soldier doesn't belong to a gender, but to whoever is willing to sacrifice everything for what they believe in. Subscribe for more.